bring you a special bulletin.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
In 5, check for sound. 4,
It's showtime.
3,
Let's
2,
go.
1.
You're listening to the Pro Audio Suite, a program for audio and voiceover professionals. Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. This week we have a special. It's a microphone shootout. I'll just run through the microphones in a tick, but first of all, we have a special guest from Nashville, Tennessee. We met him a couple of weeks ago. He's back. Jeff Silverman.
Howdy. Or hello. Or, I'm a little confused.
Whichever suits. Yeah, that's right. We have our normal team of George Whittam in LA.
Hey, what's up? Hanging out here near the ocean down here in California.
Dude. In Chicago, Robert Marshall.
Robert from Chicago.
This is getting ridiculous. Robbo in Sydney.
I'm going to be the odd one out and just say hi.
Oh, that's a bit disappointing.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, and me sort of down the coast, out of Melbourne, kind of like being a bit of a dude myself. It's a bit of a surf joint that I live in. Anyway, so our microphone special this week, we're looking at a series of microphones that pretty well cover every kind of area, I hope. The only reason we're using the ones we've got is because they're the ones that I had close to hand. So we have a Sennheiser 416, a Rode NTG4, a Rode Procaster, an AKG C414eb P48, an NT1 from Rode, a Microtech Gefell M930, a Jeanne JA87, and a Microtech Gefell M92.1S, which is Eric Bazilion's favourite microphone. So what we're going to do is have a listen to all the microphones together because Jeff has been very kind and lined them all up for us so we can have a bit of a listen to them and just compare them.
So the price range is wide.
The price range is huge. It goes from around about $150, $160 for the Procaster to, I think, Vintage King sell the M92.1S for about $2,500, and that's in US dollars. So, Jeff, if you would press the button, please.
Be happy to. How much do you want to hear of each sample? About 5 seconds or a little less?
I like hearing basically the microphone name, and there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Here you go.
See what you think of the C414eb P48, a vintage mic from 1983. This one comes from Melbourne company Jeanne Audio. It's called the JA87. It's the M92.1S. It's a limited edition Microtech Gefell M930 Art. Our next microphone is the NT1, which is the latest edition, the one that's black. From Rode Microphones, it's called the Procaster. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it. This is the NTG4.
Wow.
And I take it back. They are all very different.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? When you hear them like that, they are certainly different. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a few things. We're going to talk about, value for money, best quality microphone, what kind of genre they're going to fit, whether it's imaging, vocals, home studio, road case, whatever. Also servicing and reliability, which is something you need to consider, especially if it's your one go-to mic, and the pros and cons of each microphone. So, based on that, we should start with the standard kit for voiceover, which is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416. George, you'd be very familiar with this one.
Yeah, we hate using the term industry standard, but it certainly has established itself as such in the voiceover world of Los Angeles. In fact, so much so that in voiceover we call it the LA mic, and we call the U87 the New York mic.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the Chicago mic?
Or the Chicago, sorry about
It's an
that.
SM57.
No, I don't know. I'm saying, actually we do tend to use coming from Evanston, the SM57 would be the Chicago mic, wouldn't it be?
It's very hard to deny the 416 has a sound that we know, and it sounds in this mix about right. It's pleasing but a little bit hyped, but the thing is, you line it up with the others, and the value proposition, I don't know. Is it worth $1,000? Because there's some really strong mics in this category for a lot less money.
Okay, so based on that, where do you think this microphone sits? Is it an imaging mic? Is it a vocal mic? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Commercial mic, you know?
It's an imaging mic for sure because it's got it almost has a compression. It's so bizarre because of the way it's designed. It almost sounds like you're compressing the audio without compression, and it has this 8 kilohertz bump that really punches it up in the mix. And if people love it, they can throw it over sound effects and music, and it sits right over top a lot of the time. So that seems to be what it's for. But you'd never believe how many times I've seen one of these in a audiobook production studio. The last thing I would imagine using it for.
Yeah.
So it's used all over the place.
Yeah.
I think the 416 it definitely has that, like, you know, cuts through the mix just like a knife kind of thing, and you often don't have to EQ it as much. And what at first seems like kind of a snarly, kind of edgy thing that it has, along with that bass, because it's the super hyper, the shotgun, polar pattern. But what's funny about it is that you think it won't work for so many things, and then when you throw it into a mix, it just works. And I think that's what engineers like about it, is that it's just fits in so easily, even though I think it's probably, in reality, if you put it up on a scope, probably full of distortion and other inharmonic stuff due to its polar pattern mainly. But yeah, it definitely works for the purpose, which is the point.
Now, you've been using these for years, Robbo, doing imaging and stuff. You expect to receive a file that's on a 416?
Yeah, look, I can't think of too many other mics that I've used in 30-odd years of doing radio imaging. It's about all I remember ever using. There's the odd Neumann, I guess, thrown in there here and there. But yeah, it's pretty much, well, I mean, as George said, we hate using the term, but it's pretty much industry standard. You don't get too much stuff that's not recorded on one.
The question is, though, and I've heard this before, it's not the perfect microphone for a female voice.
No, true. But you still usually, the files usually turn up off one, so because it's just been stuck in front of them. So you deal with it. But yeah, I mean, Robert's also right. I mean, you can stick it up in amongst anything, and it already cuts before you touch it. And as we all know, with radio imaging, you don't just touch a voiceover file, you squash and EQ the shit out of it and then stick a whole bunch of effects over the top as well. And then I guess that's the other thing, is it sort of stands up to all that as well, without sort of too much detriment to the sound. Is it, you can, for some reason, compress the living shit out of it, and it'll still sound all right. So,
yeah. Now, Jeff, you wouldn't have come across these I would think, ever, probably.
Listening down to the comparisons, especially comparing to the AKG C414eb, it definitely has more mid-range and a little bit sibilant for me. If I was to put a vocalist on it, I'd be a little bit hesitant. But at the same time, what you said, Robert, makes a lot of sense, that just like in a mix, sometimes you don't look for something that's necessarily good by itself, but you look for something that's going to cut through 100 instruments or 100 tracks of instruments or a huge string section. So you sort of anticipate what it's going to end up being in the mix. And I think with that said, I could see where the mid-range could be very helpful. The sibilants, though, compared to some of these other ones, were enough to make me concerned as a mixer.
It's funny you brought up sibilants. I've always felt that about the 416. And one time I was in a client's studio and he had the 416 up with an Avalon mic preamp that's very popular here also. And I dialed out a little bit of the sibilants. I notched out a little bit around 6-8K, somewhere around there. And he was doing a promo for ABC, and they called us on it. They said, "Is something wrong with that mic? Doesn't sound quite right." Yeah. And I was like, "Well, I made it sound a little smoother." And he's like, "Take that off, would you?"
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, once they expect that sound, if you muck with it, the engineer ain't going to be too happy about it. They're expecting it to have that sound. They've probably already compensated for it in their mix, I would imagine.
Hey, Jeff, a couple of episodes ago, I should say, Robert alluded to the fact that for sort of rap and hip-hop, that the 416 might become a bit of a standard purely because of the way the performances are delivered. Do you see that at all, or do you think that's...
No, again, I think that's the mid-range would actually work for you.
As long as they can stay on mic. That's the only thing. Is the problem with the 416 is that it's so directional, which is like, it's really great feature, and also can be a tough thing because you got to stay right in the right place with it. If not, it shifts about a lot sonically. So, people on the road trying to minimize their room. And I think that's another reason why it's so popular in post-production. Whereas with music, you're more dealing often with studios of like, okay, let's sit down and let's do this thing. And it's not like, oh my God, get him on the mic. We need to do a promo right now. Where are you? I don't care. Like, just say the words.
Yeah.
So, just stay on mic with that mic because you got to.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I had for each microphone. This one, obviously, is a bit of a go-to for a road case if you're a voiceover talent.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
It's my go-to travel mic for voice actors. Like, if they already use one at home, it's a no-brainer to take on the road. And even if they don't, it's still kind of a no-brainer. I mean,
in fact,
there are certainly less expensive options, and we have a few of those on the list here, but
I saw some great road cases for it, which is literally just go to Home Depot, get a piece of PVC tubing, line it with a little bit of padding, and cap it on either end. There's your road case for that thing. Doesn't take any more space than it does normally, and it'll definitely protect it.
Well, that's interesting because Rode actually do give you a aluminum or aluminium tube to put the NTG3 in for Rode, and it's actually waterproof and everything. Very good.
It's real nice.
Yeah, very nice.
It'd be very interesting to hear a quick A/B between the 416 and the NTG3, just because it's like, I assume Rode was trying to kind of go a little bit after the 416 market with that mic.
Yeah, we don't have that mic here, unfortunately.
Ah, darn it. Sorry.
We got the NTG4, which is the next one off the rank. That's right.
So which one do you want to, I'm sorry, which one do you want to hear?
416 and NTG4.
Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it. This is the NTG4. Nothing is switched on, no high-pass filter, no high boost. Well, there you go. That's
the 416 still got more of that cut.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
It still has more cut than that Rode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the NTG4 is different to the 416 in the sense it does have a high-pass filter and a high boost, which I kind of think could be handy on the road. That's my guess. If you're like a pillow fort or something, or a porta booth or something, that should work okay. Do you reckon it would, George?
Yeah, I mean, is that a two-position low cut or just a single on-off low cut on the NTG4? Does that have two positions?
No, just the one position.
Just one, okay. Yeah, just based on what I heard from the samples, the low cut on there is really aggressive. It really does take off a lot of low end. So, I think it may work on some people's voices, and in other cases, I think it just guts it a little bit too much. And then I'd rather do it in my.
I think most engineers rather do that later than not get the chance to deal with it on their own.
A lot of mics have a very gentle low cut switch or high pass, where it rolls off at 6 dB per octave, and it's doesn't do a whole lot. But that one does the opposite. It's like very much like, we want to just get clean enough dialogue to cut so that we can hear this guy talk over the background noise. Yeah. So we'll just take everything below 150 out. That's what it sounds like to me.
There's a MyLab we used to work with over at a post house cutters here in Chicago, and the MyLab, crazy enough, had a 300 hertz low pass.
That's a weird,
or not low pass, but low pass. Cut, low cut, and really weird frequency. But it was like incredibly gentle. But I remember always looking at that, going like, "Are they nuts?" It might have even been 400 hertz. I think it was like way up there. It's a strange mic with a rectangular diaphragm.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So how do we rate the NTG4 from Rode?
What's the price point?
$300.
Very good for the price.
For the price, absolutely.
I would say. That's a great stunt mic, I like to call it. Like, you're not dripping with money. You don't have two 416s. You want to have that mic that you can throw in the bag and keep on the road and not feel so worried about losing a $1,000 mic. That one's not too bad. Yeah. Not too shabby.
Robert,
if I may ask, what kind of gain had to be added or subtracted from that? Do you know, Jeff?
Well, I could play you the actual file that wasn't normalized if you want to hear that one.
Let's hear the difference that got it into the range.
Nothing is switched on, no high pass filter, no high boost. It's just completely flat. Nothing is switched on, no high pass filter, no high boost.
A lot. Yeah.
A lot. Now do the same thing with the 416.
is the Sennheiser 416 phone. Microphone number 2
Similar.
is the Sennheiser 416.
Now, these have just been, normalized in Pro Tools with, just slapping it down 99.9% and just letting it do its thing, which isn't too hot.
Yeah.
Right, but they both got kicked up quite a bit. So it doesn't sound like there's a tremendous gain difference between the two, actually.
Robert, if you got sent a voiceover file recorded on it, what would you think? Would you be happy to
use it?
Yeah, I'd use it.
Totally, yeah. I'd probably bump a little bit more 3K or something, 3 to 6, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Just make it cut a little bit better, but because it did sound a little bit duller than the 416 to me, but overall, I wouldn't scoff at it.
But it has that high boost button too, so they must have. I guarantee the 416 was sitting in the lab when they were working on that, and they were trying to take aim at that mic for a much lower price. I feel pretty confident about that, but it's a good value proposition. I definitely like it.
That price surprises me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, there you go, $300 opposed to $1,000 for the 416.
Yeah,
could be a good one to have at home and also chuck in the road case. Now, the next microphone is a bit of a, it's just one we chucked in the mix just to get an idea of what dynamic microphones sound like. The only one I had handy was the Rode Procaster. From Rode Microphones, it's called the Procaster. I'm running it once again through the M101. Is the Sennheiser 416
So there even still feels like a gain difference between those, even after normalized. But
do you reckon that's because of a lack of some of the high end stuff compared to the 416?
I think it actually has to do with the 416 being a little bit more compressed sounding. So when it got gained up, there was less of a difference between the peaks, but the dynamic sounds like the normalizer picked some peak, and then it didn't pump up the rest of the file as much.
The thing the only thing I've noticed with the Procaster, it's not what I expected to hear. I thought it was going to be sort of flabby and, fat, but it's got quite a bit of top end from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's thin and narrow band sounding. Like it's definitely. It doesn't sound as broad as the 416, to me at least.
So, based on the Procaster, would you accept a file of a voice on the Procaster?
Well, you got to work with what you get. I would not be super happy about it, and I'm sure I would be working on it to try to make it sound more, condenser-like. Get some top end into it, some air. It wouldn't just be chuck it in the mix. You'd have to fit it in and work on it a little bit more.
Yeah.
What about Jeff? What about for a vocal?
It wouldn't be my go-to mic. I'm sorry, I don't have much more to say. That got me in and out real quick.
Compared to what you would look for in a vocal mic, what's it lacking?
Well, again, it's got more mid-range than I would probably care to have when I start things out. Of course, I wouldn't put a female voice on that, but it all depends on the range, and it all depends on the singer. I mean, female vocals can be really soft and airy and low, plus it doesn't have a lot of bottom end, but that again could be a plus if you want a close-up sound with a vocalist, and you don't want to have to filter out, high pass anything. So I just felt that wasn't as musical to me as some of the other mics that I've heard here.
Great feedback.
And I keep getting back to Rode. I was really, really impressed with that.
Yeah, right.
NT1.
That's coming up. So, all right.
But the price point on that caster is like $150, right?
Correct, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like you compare it to other dynamics that are known for being great dynamics, like 421s and SM7s, and I think you're still 3-4 times the price difference, even with mics in its similar supposed class.
Well, they're kind of, what are they? They're like an RE20. I mean, I think that's kind of what they're trying to do with
RE20, 421, SM7, I think is all in the same, maybe even a 441.
I mean, if you're auditioning, say you're setting up someone to just do auditions at home, that could be a really good mic to use for auditions, I guess. To
be honest, I mean, I wonder how it sits against just your SM58, you're basically your mic at half the price point. I wonder if it does compete with those.
There are some very inexpensive dynamic mics available that podcasters love that sound better than the Procaster. And I don't have it to A/B against, but anecdotally, I can tell you there are some better mics out there for less money.
There are some very good mics out there for not so much. It's true,
Yeah.
very true. The MXL 1006.
Exactly, yes. Now we're moving on to large diaphragm condensers. The first one we have is the AKG C414eb. The one we used is the P48 from 1983, which is the black one. But I know, Robert, you're sitting actually on an EB as well.
Silver. Yep,
You
I
got
got the silver one here.
Which should be gold because they're worth gold, and that's a fact.
You're inspiring me to go look it up on eBay and see what people are doing.
Well, if you can see, can you see the capsule?
Yeah, it's definitely like no center tap, but I think that's the way all the 414 mics are. What am I looking for?
There's two different capsules you get in the EB, and the first run was the C12 capsule, which is the brass one. And then, without telling anybody, they changed capsules to make a cheaper version, which is basically the nylon capsule.
So how can I tell visually?
The only way you probably either pull the mic apart or shine a flashlight into the grill, and you'll see it. You'll see if it's either white. Yeah.
I'm not pulling it apart.
No, don't do that.
Well, there's one on reverb.com, which is a used audio gear repository here for selling your gear. Doesn't mean that this mic will sell for this, but someone in New York has the mic that Robert has, the CK12, for $34.99. That's $3,500
Jesus
US.
Christ, I have no idea. The hoop is definitely brass, and the whole thing is golden looking.
Yeah. So if the capsule's brass, that's the expensive one. That's the C12 capsule.
All right, this one's going in its case now.
Yeah.
Hold the podcast while Robert changes mic.
Yeah, that's right. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Robert uses this as a talkback mic, folks.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Not anymore.
You know, it's been sitting on the piano in the studio. It's I use it on vocals. I love it, to be honest, but it's just been this mic that I mean, you can throw this thing in front of anything, to be honest.
It's a great mic.
Yeah, but don't throw it.
Damn,
Don't
we
throw
should have offered him $500 before you told him.
Exactly. All right, so we're talking about the AKG C414eb and compare it to the 416. See what you think of the C414eb P48, a vintage mic from 1983. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it.
More bottom on the 414. I like the 414.
I listen to the 416. I think it sounds nice. Then I listen to the 414, and I go,
yes.
All that sibilance goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got more beef to it, more like, yeah.
I'm using that microphone right now, actually, and but I'm running it through an LA610, and I've just given it a bit of a boost on the 10K, about plus 3 dB, just to give it a bit of top end. That's all. But yeah, I think it sounds great.
I think it's exactly that. Like the 416 definitely had more edge to it, but it was like almost like maybe that was too much edge. And then you hear the 414, you're like mellower, but still right there and present. And then it had that extra bottom that just kind of made it like rounded and really real and just right there for you. I liked it better than the 416. And funny enough, I'll say this, it might be easier to work with if you're trying to change the sound more. It'd be harder to make the 416 not sound like a 416 or not like get rid of that edge that it imparts.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I was going to say too, if you, for me, if I was going to do an audio book or something like that, that's less fatiguing on the ears, from the ones we've listened to so far, that would easily be my go-to.
I was going to say, like, we talked earlier about how the 416 works so great because of the way it cuts in a mix. But when you're hearing a mic in a vacuum, without anything else, you don't want necessarily that.
Right.
And a mic that's smoother and fuller, less bright, but still has articulation, is definitely great for audiobooks or anything where it's just a voice or in a vacuum and you're just having,
It doesn't sound like anything's missing from it.
No,
but it also doesn't sound like it's like overly pushed like that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it though.
416.
Yeah, you're right. There's nothing missing. I think that's a great way to put it.
Now, Jeff, you had to play around with this microphone as well. You really liked this one, didn't you?
I did. Again, the bass was a little bit hyped compared to some of the other ones, but I just kept coming back to feeling that it was the most natural. And again, I keep coming back to that was my point of comparison to the Rode NT and Jeanne JA87 and your Gefell N930. But they all had a little bit more or less with the hype. So I kept coming back to the AKG going, well, that seems to be the most common ground for me to, again, A-B back to.
The low end is so easy to control with good mic technique on that mic. You know, you back up an inch or 2 inches and you've just adjusted the low end.
There's so many different 414s, but one thing about it, you know, comparing it to something like the 416 is, you know, you got 4 polar patterns, you got a couple of high passes, you got a pad on it, you got excuse me, I just took my windscreen away. But it's probably a more flexible mic. You know, you want to kind of get towards that shotgunny thing, and you got the hypercardioid pattern. You know, a lot of bang for your buck in there with a lot of quality to the sound.
But you've also got to be a bit mindful of which C414 you get, because they certainly vary, don't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's the transformerless ones at the end of the run, which I've actually used those a lot, too, and those are pretty sweet, I think.
Is that the XL2? The
TL2, I think it was. I don't know about the XL2. The XL2 is the one that had the electronic switch for the patterns instead of the, I think, the mechanical switch. So there's so many 414s. I mean, you're talking about the ULS, the EB, the XL2, or the TL2, and then the XL.
I'll tell you, in terms of value proposition, again, I'm on Reverb because this just seems to keep coming up as a source for selling mics that's consistent. The one that the sample you're hearing is the C414eb P48. That has the nylon capsule. Available, used right here for about $800. The one that Robert has, which has the more desirable, quote unquote, brass capsule, coming in at $3,500.
Jeez.
You know, is it 4 times better sounding? No way.
No.
Can't possibly be.
No, it's not.
But, you know, there's certain mics that become coveted just because. Because they are rare, because they got replaced early on in their production, and they're just straight up rare, you know. And
or because someone did some vocal on it, and that was the one, you know.
Right.
It's funny to see people trying to chase the U47s, and I forget, it was... Those originally they had a Mylar capsule, and everyone wants those, but those are, I think the issue with those is that the capsules don't last.
Right. Yeah.
And then even if you have one that's a super vintage one, it's probably all dried out and messed up. So it doesn't sound like it did when it's like the original X type of capsule.
Right. What does an original 47 sound like? Well, you have to listen to
Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, basically. But the thing you got to be careful of, and this happened to me with this microphone, because I did what other people do and went, oh, that'd be really nice to have. I paid too much for this microphone. And then when I got it, the level was, like, his output was shocking. And so it turned out that not only did I pay too much for the microphone, I then had to pay even more money to have all the caps replaced. And but having said that, I won't sell it, and it sounds pretty damn good. And the good thing was the actual capsule, when it was pulled apart, was like brand new. So it was just the age that
re-sputtered and everything. Yeah.
In the end, you know, you did maybe felt like you overpaid, but you have a mic you're going to love and keep for a long time. So yeah,
that's the only thing about buying old mics. You've got to be mindful of that. So based on what we're hearing, how do we rate this one? We think this is pretty good.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that
for $800. Basically less than the 416. We're talking about used less than the 416. Yeah, I think it even quality and value kind of. And George, what's the current, or even, like it might be like a 214 is the cardioid supposed version of these 414 lineage. That's like a $400 mic, I think.
I can tell you, I've heard a lot of them because they're, a good value. They're, they're not expensive, but people want to have that C14
sound
level one. And they're quite a bit brighter. I mean, all of the more modern 414s, are definitely brighter. So if you compare a 214 to it, it's not going to sound the same. But yeah, I mean, at that price range, it's very fair. If you find one for $700 or $800, you're looking for a mic like that, it's really hard to pass it up. If there's not another mic in this test that sounds like it, and this is the one that, to me, it checks all the boxes. So I love it. I can't go wrong with that one.
Yeah, and I think it's probably fairly tough too. I mean, AKG makes a good product. It is a large diaphragm, so I think that makes it maybe a little less roadworthy than a shotgun.
Yeah.
But not,
I don't know if I'd buy a vintage mic and then travel with it. I think that would be a little
Foolish, I think, is the word.
You can travel in like a prop plane, then it's more.
That's right. Okay, well, the next microphone we've got is down at the bottom end of the price range, around about $250. It's the Rode NT1. So let's have a listen to the NT1 with the 416. Our next microphone is the NT1, which is the latest edition, the one that's black. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it.
That's close.
So close, isn't it?
That is close, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think maybe there's a little bit of more high end, just slightly. I mean, we're talking about like 2 decibels, or not even like in the high end, but I think those things
in the 416, right?
In the 416, yeah, but really close. And I'm guessing we're talking about a good $400 price difference, right?
More. We're talking about $250.
Yeah.
$250 to $1,000, so $700, $800 price difference. And does the Rode have toys like high pass filters and polar patterns?
No, it has nothing. No change. You can't change any of the polar patterns or anything. But what it does, this is the interesting thing. It comes with a shock mount, which is a Rycote shock mount, and the pop filter, which clicks into the front of the shock mount.
It's so interesting because it's like, I would imagine the Rode is probably more forgiving off axis than the 416, yet it sounded so 416-like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anytime you have a cardioid, off axis response is far smoother. The 416 off axis response looks bizarre.
Like a comb.
It looks like a comb, literally like a comb. And you can't go off axis with that mic. So I'm really impressed with the NT1. That mic has gone through several iterations of its own, right? It started as NT1, then the NT1A, and they went back to the NT1 model name. I guess they just don't mess with success. We want to go back to the original name, and they revoiced it again. And I'd say they nailed it. And that Rycote shock mount, I've bought that mic shock mount and recommended it to many people. It's what they call a lyre-based shock mount, and it doesn't use elastics. They don't wear out. And it's a very effective design, and it's universal. You can shove all kinds of mics in that shock mount.
What's the gain difference like in this thing compared to the 416? Like as far as how far it traveled to go to, normalization? Was it the same? Did you mess around with the grace with that, or was it pretty much like apples to apples? Yep,
I just didn't touch the gain at all with the NT1.
Yeah, Jeff, what's the journey it took on This
is the unnormalized file between the two NT1 and the 416.
Our next microphone is the NT1, which is the latest edition, the one that's black. Is the Sennheiser 416,
my God,
416.
Whoa.
They're so similar.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So George, let me ask you this then, hearing that. If you were setting up a home studio for a voiceover artist who loved the sound of the 416, but probably, sort of was constantly getting told you need to stay on more, we can hear your head moving, blah, 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 would you point him in that direction then after hearing that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
This is eye-opening.
The NT1, I've heard on some female voices. The NT1A I've heard on many female voices with not so great, with really sibilant issues, sibilance being really bad sometimes. The NT1, is smoother. It's still going to be sibilant on some voices, but some voices are simply sibilant. And that's just how it is. And the NT1 is going to sound really good where a 416 may not work as well. For some people, because of that ability to be a little more relaxed on the placement. And the 416, because it is supercardioid, it has a weird back node. So it picks up stuff behind it that people never would have imagined it would pick up, whereas this mic doesn't have that because it's cardioid. So it would work better in a situation where maybe there's something hard and reflective behind the mic, like a display or something. So,
one thing is that the 416 probably has a greater proximity effect, being that super hyper cardioid patterns. I wanted to mention. You can probably play it more. I
tell you, Robert, I wanted to mention that because I don't believe that it does. And here's
the
why
416 doesn't.
Yeah, here's why I don't think it does. Like if you put that mic up next to another hypercardioid that's not a shotgun, absolutely. Like the first sample we had of the 414 that Andrew sent us was on hypercardioid, and it had quite a bit more low-end hype on it.
Yep.
And the thing about the 416 is the capsule is not
sitting
at
back.
The front of the mic.
Yeah,
it's
sitting
about
back
6
there.
inches from the front of the mic. So
Right.
even when you eat that mic, you're still 5 or 6 inches away from the capsule. So you never really get that big bump in proximity effect, you know?
That shows you the reach it has, because most people are playing the mic 5-6 inches from the tip of the mic itself, and then the capsule's another 4 or 5 inches into the mic.
Right.
So you're sitting 10 inches back from the capsule, which means that most people are playing the 416 farther away than, say, a large diaphragm mic.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's fascinating. But yeah, I have this has really given me a newfound respect for the NT1. I mean, I've known it to be a good mic, but to hear it in this context.
I mean,
really,
actually, under
impresses me.
that in that theory, you could actually play the NT1 more for its proximity effect, because you can actually get closer to the diaphragm, and you know. And,
So, Jeff, is it kind of mic you would use in your situation of music?
Yes, I just think that the mic would be a go-to mic for me because it's flatter characteristics that the AKG has, but a little bit more hype, but still musical to me. It's about the only way I can explain it. I can't put it into technical terms.
Makes sense.
I wouldn't be overly hyped on sibilance or anything like that.
Yeah. But for the most part, it's all there. You've got, you know, something ranging from probably 40 hertz up to good 18K. I don't know what its real response is, but pretty much the full range with a bump up in the top, in the middle top.
It definitely had less edge than the 416. I mean, in a musical way. So that's what I liked about it.
Yeah. I mean, you'd almost pick it before the 416, I'm guessing.
I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Bravo.
I agree with all of you. I don't think that's why I've been so quiet with this one. I don't think I've got any more to add. You guys have nailed exactly what I would say.
That's not fair.
Yeah. It's never fair with Robbo.
And can you pound a nail into a board with this mic?
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Pretty well. Yeah, it's pretty rock solid. It's a hefty unit.
I'm looking at a picture of its innards, and even the capsule itself is mounted on the Rode or on the Rycote Lyre suspension.
It's shock mounted, just built in.
Yeah, it's actually sitting on the exact same kind of Lyre suspension.
You know, the question is, how do they
itself.
do it for $250?
Amazing.
Yeah, well, if you've seen the videos of the factory in Sydney, you'll probably work out how they do it, because they've got huge amounts of numbers, and it's all computerized. Which is the other thing. If for someone like Jeff, if you wanted a match pair of mics, you're pretty well guaranteed that if you get two NT1s, they're going to match.
Yeah. Well, you know, as you know, I'm building a voice booth here, and I to be honest with you, I was going to keep the 41.6 in here for me for doing my podcasting stuff, and get a new mic for the missus who'll be using the voiceover booth, and I was going to get another 41.6, but I think I've changed my mind now after hearing that.
Now you're going to get yourself a Rode and an iPhone.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, Our next microphone is one from Microtech Gefell. This one is actually a limited edition, so I'm not really sure what they did that was different from the standard M930.
They just didn't make as many of them.
There's probably exactly that. It's a different color. Yes.
And put it in a different box.
Exactly. But it is the M930 Art. There is also an M930T, which is the one that's got a transformer, I think, from memory. But anyway, this is the M930 Art. We should compare it with the 416. It's a limited edition Microtech Gefell M930 Art. Once again, running through the M101 from Grace Design, no compression and no EQ. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it.
Whoa. Another close one. I think maybe a little bit more bottom in that Gefell, maybe?
I know that Jeff really liked this one. What are your feelings when you compare it with the 416?
You know, I've done a little bit more research since I've had more time to really dive into the mics, and I found the 930 just a little bit hypey, and I know we talked about that. And it could be a really great thing for some scenarios, but I'm only comparing it to your voice, Andrew, and I just felt that maybe it brought out a little too much of the sibilance and too much of the edge in an unpleasant way versus where I heard you on the 414 and even on the Rode NT1. It just got a little too much like somebody turned on the exciter button, which is not bad in some situations.
Is it me, or was there a little bit more low end in that Gefell? Just a tiny bit than the 416.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting where that microphone gets used. I know that Jack Douglas uses M930s as room mics. They've been used on piano, acoustic guitar, and the other strange thing, well, maybe it's not strange, they're through radio in Europe, like the big Swedish national broadcaster, every on-air microphone is an M930.
Really?
That I get, because one, isn't that mic very compact?
Yes, it is.
It's a very small body. And two, it does sound like a good radio mic to me. It has that forward mid-range. It sounds like a very high-fidelity dynamic mic. I mean,
it's not dynamic,
I don't know how
though.
to say it, but
Right? That's a condenser.
That's kind of what it sounds like to me. You know, it's pleasing in the right situation, but I agree completely with Jeff that I thought it was a little too far mid-range forward for my ears. And so for that reason, it didn't favor as well to me as the 414 or the NT1, but it was pretty darn close. Hearing it now, I'm going, whoa, it's actually closer to the 416 than I
It's very close to the
remember.
416. I mean, and the question then is, where is it price-wise to the 416? I think it's probably more.
Yes, it is. I think in America they sell for around about $1,500 US.
So it's about 500 more. Yeah.
Well, 500 of that is the stripe of pearl gold.
Oh, that's mine. Yes, you pay more for that.
Goes around the center of the mic, as I'm reading here on Recording Hacks.
Yeah.
Is it basically just a cardioid only, or what's it?
Yeah.
What other goodies?
Cardioid only. The standard one is in aluminium, sort of silver, and I think they sell for about $1,500. I'm not sure with the art what they're selling for, because they only did 80 of them, so I don't know. I think it was about close to 2,000 when they were released in 2008.
So basically, comparing it to the 416, bang for the buck, not so much of a difference for your money there. They sound very similar. I'm guessing that, that being a Gefell, it's got a very respectable noise floor and all that. So, yeah.
So you wouldn't buy it for the value price proposition. You'd buy it more for it's not a Sennheiser 416.
It's a Gefell. It's like the Corvette's just as fast, but I'd like to drive a Porsche.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, in a straight line.
It's a little nice.
In a straight line. That's very true.
Oh, we're going to get into a whole nother...
Yeah.
Do you want to hear your comparison, Robert, without the
game?
normalization on it?
Yeah,
let's do
please.
that.
Okay.
It's a limited edition Microtech Gefell M930 Art. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it.
So basically, the Microtech's got
bottom.
and it's got more gain to it.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Markedly.
The Gefell's probably got a better noise floor than the 416.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think it'd be good as a voiceover mic?
I mean,
I'd say
There's much
so.
argument there.
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely a good voiceover mic. I know voice actors who use and love it, not just because of its sound, but also of its design, because the body of the mic is so small. It just makes it easy to place it, and it's just not as ungangly to deal with. It's lighter. You can put it on a small boom arm, and in your booth, and it's just not going to block the copy as much. There's a lot of practical reasons that I think it would be good too.
Yeah, it's actually physically smaller than the 414.
Yeah. I think it's similar in size to the Neumann TLM 102. That's their baby Neumann, and it's got a very small body as well, but very different sound. I mean, the 102 is very, very bottom heavy. If you got the wherewithal, absolutely, a very nice sounding mic.
Yeah, certainly in the same range as the 416 and the Rode.
It's kind of like a smoother version of the 416.
Yeah.
I have to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Next microphone. Now, this one's a bit of an odd one because we wanted to get something that was kind of like a U87. From what I gather from feedback I've got and read, that the JA87 from Jeanne Audio is pretty close to a U87. So that's why we chucked it in the mix, just to get an idea of that style of microphone. So let's have a listen to the Jeanne Audio JA87 and compare it with the 416. This one comes from Melbourne company Jeanne Audio. It's called the JA87. Now, by all accounts, it's actually not too dissimilar to an authentic U87 AI. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it.
It's almost like we're going in order of character. Like as we go down the list, each mic seems to have a bit more character, for lack of a better word. You know, it's not a flat mic at all. It's
definitely less hyped up than the 416.
Much less hyped.
It'd be interesting to hear that. It'd be interesting to hear that compared to the 414.
That was my note exactly. It's very similar to the C414. Slightly less bottom and less low end hype.
Can you do that?
Kind of like
you want to hear that?
Do that?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
See what you think of the C414eb P48, a vintage mic from 1983. This one comes from Melbourne company Jeanne Audio. It's called the JA87.
Bit more bottom end on the 414. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what you're hearing.
But there's something pleasing. Yeah. There's something very pleasing about the Jeanne Audio, I think. It's a little bit kind of maybe boring in a way, but it's not... it doesn't sound like it'd be hard to work with at all, you know?
Interesting thing about that mic, I left it with a studio in Melbourne who use U87s. And they were pretty close. In fact, we were doing a campaign where I always used a U87 for the voiceover for these TV ads. And we did a swap and we used that Jeanne Audio for one of the sessions. And it was so close to an U87 AI. There was just a little bit more, I think, a little bit more brittleness in the top. That was about the only difference.
And I usually associate the U87 with a fairly dark microphone.
I always think it's the wrong microphone for someone working in Australia, because Australians have a nasal accent, and that thing has a real honk in that sort of mid-range.
What are you talking about? Come on, mate,
it does have that's the word I'm looking for, or thinking of, is honk. It's got a bit of a honk to me that it seems a little bit peaky, but I mean, as you said, it is very much like a U87, and the U87, I mean, there's several different U87s too, but if you're talking about the more modern one, the AI, it's it's a little bit of a mid-range honk to it, and that's the reason I don't like it that much. That's the reason why I don't like the U87 all that much, all the time. But as an engineer who knows how to EQ, everything is there, you know? Yeah. There's no holes in the response. It's very smooth. And you could very much sculpt it to be what you want. And then the value proposition on that mic.
What's the price point on that?
Well, I don't know whether he's still making them, but they were selling for 1,000 Australian, so about 750 US.
Again, I hate to use the word, but it sounds flat. I think the best word used here is workable.
Yeah. My notes here, when I was listening through the files when Andrew sent them the other day, I've written down a blank slate. So I've obviously heard that too. You know, it's just sort of, it's a palette ready to be painted. Yeah.
But what is it about the 87? Why, you know, you said earlier, like the New York mic is the U87 and the 416 is the LA mic. U87s are everywhere here as well. What is it about the U87 that made them so desirable for the human voice?
I think it got there first, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a venerable mic. There's just no doubt about it. If there's anything that's an industry standard, certainly in voiceover, other than the 416, it seems to be the U87. You know, it was there at the right time. It was the mic to go to. It was obviously, being phantom power, more practical than the U67. No, I have a client with a 67. Wow. It is something else. I understand why those things are quite pricey.
But talking about U87s, though, Jeff, you would have been using those back in the 70s, I'm guessing, at Sound City.
I wasn't the engineer at that point, but I do remember them being the go-to mic.
Because it just works, right? Because it's just flexible. It's undeniable. I mean, I've heard of that mic being used on every instrument in the studio. Kick drum, toms, overheads, room mics, orchestra mics, piano, everything.
Yeah.
414s were a common denominator back then as well, like especially on pianos or overheads on drums. Anywhere you needed that extra top end, there was a 414 sort of hanging around.
Compared to the 87, which is a little bit darker,
Warmer,
right?
yeah,
warmer, sure. That's my recollection of it. Yeah.
One thing I haven't seen an 87s on is overhead. Really, that's not that common. But room mics, I've heard of that a lot.
Yeah, it is kind of like that in front of the drum kit mic. It's used for that. I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of an expense. I mean, the other reason why sometimes you don't see certain mics in certain places is because, like, I don't think someone's going to get their U87 too close to a drummer with sticks flying.
Right.
There's
practical reasons. Yeah, there's practical reasons.
Yeah.
I've heard it used as a kick drum mic, which I'm like, wow, really?
Yeah.
You got a lot of mics when that ends up.
But a dark mic on overheads is not unheard of because the Coles, what is it, the 4038 is the Coles ribbon, which is not bright, and that's a very popular overhead.
Well, I was going to ask,
ribbon.
did someone mention that they'd heard of a U87 used on a snare? Did someone say that?
Jeez, brave person.
No? Oh, okay. I thought I heard someone say that. Because my question was going to be, wouldn't you be looking, not being a music engineer, wouldn't you be looking for something with a bit more sort of crack? You know what I mean? That sort of...
And not so big. I mean, you're trying to get into a tight spot with a snare, and you got that big, huge 87. Yeah. I mean, that's something to say about the 414. It's going to get in there a little bit better than the 87. But talk about strange mics in strange places. I saw a music engineer take a PZM mic, put it on a stand, and point it at a hi-hat.
Huh.
Weird.
PZMs are those super flat mics?
Yeah, like room mic. It's like you put it on a wall and turn the whole wall into a microphone is the idea of the PZM. I was an intern at the time, so I don't know how it worked out for the guy, but it was a pretty big studio, and he seemed pretty knowledgeable about what he was doing.
He got fired.
Yeah.
Well, there's a guy. You'll have to Google this. This would be a fun little needle in a haystack. There's a guy in Maryland who built a custom 1-inch 2-track tape analog machine.
Jesus.
And he custom modified a pair of PZMs, and he records entire bands that way. He has the room that he has tuned the way he wants it. He puts the musicians where he wants them, and he does albums that he releases himself under his own label.
Sure.
And that's how he records. And it's so cool to hear bands even like a reggae band recorded this way. It's just something so interesting about it.
Maybe this could be part of our voiceover suit. We just have a PZM stuck to your forehead.
There you go.
Or the roof of your mouth.
Problem solved.
Yes.
The contact mic on your...
Down the Dunes cars today.
The voiceover suit.
We got
one more mic, right?
We got to do it.
One more
let's
to
do the
go,
last one.
which is perfect actually, because you were talking about U87s and U67s. The last one is another Microtech Gefell. It's the M92.1S. It has the EF86 tube or valve.
Oh, cool. EF86, yep.
And it also has the original M7 capsule. So it's basically a modern version of a UM57. So let's check that out along with the 416. It's the M92.1S. It has the M7 capsule, which is a very historic capsule. In fact, it's pretty well an updated version of the UM57. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it.
And there's your winner. That thing is great sounding.
You hear the 41.6, that top end stuff that we're always talking about,
just
don't
like,
you?
oh, man.
It's just like, wow.
That Microtech was nice sounding, for sure.
It's weird. I'm looking at their frequency curve, the response curve on Recording Hacks. It is anything but smooth. I'm assuming that this is an appropriate or accurate representation of its curve, but it's bumpier than you can. It's got little jaggedy lines all the way through it.
In the mid-range?
In the mid-range.
Yeah.
And then it starts to roll off. It has a little bit of a dip in the nasal, in like the 300 range. And then after that, it starts to just gently slope off. And I noticed that, it doesn't have a rich low end to it. Doesn't have that 414 tone in the low end that the other ones do. And I think I get a little bit too enamored with that low end, but to me, it's not as flattering to me. Just not as flattering.
I thought it sounded pretty nice. compared to the 416, I thought it sounded better personally. I don't know.
This is a very not divisive, if that's the word, but this is one that's got a lot of character
Deceptive?
to it, and I think you like it. Yeah, I think you like it or you don't. I don't know.
I like it.
You want to hear it
know.
unnormalized for a second?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
It's the M92.1S. It has the M7 capsule, which is a very historic capsule. Is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416.
Pretty close.
Very close.
Yeah, gain-wise pretty close. It's funny because, like, you know, not looking at pictures, just I felt that the 416 sounded more messed with, more peaked out, more shaped, and that Microtech to me sounded just more pleasing, more rounded out or something. But not that it was dull or in any place. It just sort of like if I had to guess between the two, I would say that the Microtech would be easier to work with and easier to put into more places.
It's an interesting microphone, and in fact, if you spend time on Gear Sluts, that microphone gets a lot of mentions. In fact, it's probably, people say it's one of the, if not the best vocal microphone around.
Is this like a lollipop mic? Is that the one that it is?
No, that's the CMV. But it's
Right.
got, in fact, the new version of the CMV, 563, I think, has the EF86 capsule,
EF86, yeah.
has the M7 capsule. Just the electronics are slightly different. And, of course, having the different grill is going to change the way the microphone works.
True.
But so what do you reckon? Jeff, you were sort of in two minds about that microphone, weren't you?
Well, my note says it was heavy in the mid-range and it lacked fidelity compared to me running an order with the 414 and then the JA87 and then listening to that. Would you mind if I did that real quick just to hear those three in a row?
See what you think of the C414eb P48. This one comes from Melbourne company Jeanne Audio. It's the M92.1S.
Hear that hump in the upper mid-range?
Yeah, but I like it.
Yeah,
I
do
gotta
too.
say, I kind of like that Microtech. It's, yeah.
It's got character. I mean,
Sure.
it works. Value proposition.
what is that thing, like $3,000?
Well, I'm looking at a U.S. dealer. It's around $3,500 US.
Yeah.
Oh, it's more expensive than I thought. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's up there. It's U87 territory. Maybe a little more, I guess.
I'd personally buy that before a U87, but hey. And is it fixed pattern or multi-pattern?
Fixed.
Fixed, isn't it?
The UM is the multi-pattern and the M is the fixed cardioid.
So you know what we can take from that price point is when AP turns around and tells us he's a struggling voiceover artist, we can sort of go, yeah, right.
It was a slightly ridiculous when I said I'd just use the microphones I've got here that I own. It was a bit silly, wasn't it? Really? Just don't tell the wife.
Yeah.
Dead man walking.
Would you like to drive a car or?
Yeah, that's right.
Just don't tell her what currency.
Yeah, that's
Quite a bit less than pounds.
Honey, I bought a new car. It's parked in the studio.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. In dirhams.
Well, we bantered around the U67, which was just re-released. $7,999.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
And does it use an EF86? Because my understanding is they don't make those anymore. So everyone's like scrounging around in
they
boxes.
swear up and down that mic is part for part.
I had Bee's Knees. I don't know if he's an Australian mic maker, and I had a U87 that was so shot that we decided that the best thing to do with it was to basically gut it and turn it into a 67. And the big difference with the KK87 and the KK67 capsule is a little bit more space because of the extra voltage that the tubes put onto that capsule compared to the phantom power. And so he made the first mic with an EF86, and it was a good mic. The build quality was problematic, and so it went back to him, and then he built it again, and I don't know what tube he used, but he used the same tube that Peluso uses in the P67. And I gotta say, I couldn't do an A-B comparison, but I was like, no, don't change the mic. I want it to be a 67. And he's like, trust me, you're gonna like it better. And I do remember getting the mic back and being like, yeah, it's cleaner, basically, was what it was. It was just similar tube, And there's guys that know everything about these tubes, but just better noise floor with the same characteristics. And I'm not sure what tube that is that they're using in that Peluso 67, but I think it's a common tube that's sort of your EF86 replacement, maybe, that you can still get your hands on. More common, more, you know.
I thought the EF86 was the easier one to get.
I don't think so. I think the EF86 is the one from the 60s, and it was like the one that you can't like there's a couple really like the New Vista, what do you call those, like some of the tubes you can't get at all anymore, and that's what makes some of these
well, this says, according to guitarcenter.com, it's built with the KK67 and the EF86.
So they must be remaking those tubes, I guess. Yeah. So the KK67 and the KK87 are nearly the same. It's just a distance, physical distance.
When this was released, I was at NAMM, the NAMM trade show here in LA, and I did a video with the rep, and he said, you know what, the tubes, not as much of the sound characteristic as people give them credit for. That was his opinion. It was really more about the transformer in terms of coloring.
Sure. Yeah. I'd agree with that. Transformers are notorious for, and that's why, some of those transformerless microphones, and they're so airy, and there's been a couple of transformers like mics that I've actually really liked.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, while I'm doing all this Googling, I was wrong on the price. I think Robert was right. $6,995, about $7,000 US, not $8,000. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's
still
the U67. Yeah. Well, if you look at the Microtech CMV563, I think they'll be up sort of in the 5s and 6s US dollars, I'm guessing. The remake.
Well, I have a client with two 67s, two U667s. One was refurbed with a new power supply. One's totally original. And they take their turns going back and forth to the
shop.
Microtech up in Burbank that we use. They're flaky. So what did we do? We went and got a P67. That's the Peluso Robert was talking about. It's pretty dang close for about 22 or 2100. And but they don't look the same. And the reason why is because Peluso was not allowed to replicate the head basket.
Yeah, that's right. Norman's got a patent on that.
Yeah, they had to I spoke to a rep, and he said it took them a very long time to get the head basket design on the P67 because I had to have a distinctly different shape but still sound the same. And he said that was very hard. Everything else was not hard. That took them a long time.
I don't know how Flea are getting away with it with their M49. It's identical to it.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, people are making bodies for these kits to go into that. They look exactly the same, or the Wonder looks exactly the same too.
Yeah,
it is interesting. Yeah, there's a Warm Audio. You guys know that company?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They're doing the WA87.
Yep.
And their stuff comes at a stupendously low price point, I believe.
Yeah, they're really big on the value. I think they're the Warm Audio 87, which is designed to be vintagey, more like an older 87. Is around $700-800.
I have had I've never touched or used a piece of Warm gear, but I've talked to many an engineer, and to be honest, the opinion I've heard more often than not is looks like, does not sound like said gear that it is looking to. Like same thing with their 1176 and their
hadn't heard that, but that doesn't surprise me that much. I mean, the R&D has to go somewhere. I mean, you can make a great piece of gear that sounds good at the price, but if you're trying to really replicate something, that's extremely expensive to do.
Yeah, I think you either get all those components and you replicate it, or you try to cut corners, and then probably something's going to happen unless you do a significant amount of R&D, and like Peluso did, to sort of do a modern take on a old thing and still keep true to it, really true to it.
The trouble is, of course, if you talk like 1176s, they're so old now. I guarantee if you got 10
they all sound
originals, they'd all be different. So
absolutely.
it's like, the Jeff Slate audio. I mean, the U87 in Slate.
Start putting differences into them.
Yeah.
Well, that's been intriguing, guys. That was a lot of fun. That was well worth doing.
Yeah. But the conclusion is, have we got one? I mean, what is our favourite mic?
Do you know what? For me, I still come back to horses for courses. I still think, I think we've shown that there's, 416, as we talked about for radio imaging, it has everything that I want. I think the guys, Robert and Jeff, have sort of said that there's other mics in there that have the characters they want. So it sort of probably still a bit horses for courses. Would I be right?
Yeah. I mean, what I took away from it was very impressed with that Rode sounding very 416-like.
Yeah.
It confirms my opinion that the 416 just has that cut that just sort of works out of the box without having to mess with too much. And some of the other mics, while they might be more pleasing and probably more workable, like you can put them in more places, they probably take more time to work with and get them in the right place in a sort of post-production context, maybe not a music context. And then the only other thing I took away from it was it does kind of reaffirm my opinion that the 414 is a desert island mic, definitely.
Yeah. George?
If you had to have one.
Yeah, coming away from the test, the one that floated to the top for Andrew's voice here was the 414eb. The NT1, very favorable. I mean, for bang for the buck, you cannot.
That's the winner.
That one's just an absolute winner here. Bang for the buck. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So those are my favorites when compared to the 416. The NTG4 without the low cut on, with the high boost on, so the low cut flat, but the high boost on, might be very 416-like. And would be interesting to hear that at some point, Andrew. You could send over a sample at some point.
Yeah.
But, I think that one is also a very nice value for travelers. That one of 416 stunt mic. So to me, those are the ones that really stand out, in my opinion.
And Jeff, your conclusion?
Well, I have to agree with George on the 414 and the NT1 as being the standout mics from this group of comparisons, and with your voice as being the common denominator. I'm on the line with the M930 being next, and the JA87 being its competitor.
Let me throw this question out there. Even after all that, would anyone still give AP a voiceover job?
Not based on that, probably.
It proves that you can't fix it with a mic.
That's right.
And I also say that you can't. I mean, I think Andrew, you were alluded to another time about hearing the money of the mic. I don't think you can.
Yeah, I think we've disproved that a lot today.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, I agree.
I think to me that theory went away when more than once have I been on that MXL 1006 and people go, "What mic is that?" And it's like, it's $100 Chinese mic.
Yeah.
And people are like,
it's
really?
crazy. I'm on that mic now, and it's not flat. I've got a little bit. Well, actually, I have a low end, low cut, and a little compression. And this is that C1000. I'm sorry, the MXL 1006. That's what it sounds like, completely, fully bypassed and flat. And so I'm so used to hearing it now through my processor. I'm kind of spoiled.
Brings it up a little bit, yeah.
But it's fantastic for its bang for the buck.
$100.
Yeah.
I mean, geez. And probably now people are chucking them for $50, because
Probably.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing from my point of view, working from my studio here, the clients that I deal with, majority of them want the 416. And the other thing that was interesting was when I first grabbed the NT1, I didn't tell people what it was, but I sent it out to a few studios and said, "What do you think of this?" They all loved it, asked what it was, and couldn't believe it either. So
that is a takeaway. The NT1 is definitely like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think everyone wanting the 416 things comes back to that conversation we've had a bunch of times now. People have just become so used to that sound that that's what you expect. And when you don't hear it, when you open up that download, you go, "Well, hang on, what's wrong?" I think it's probably laziness. I was going to say laziness.
That was exactly what I was going to say. Like, engineers just want to put it in the mix and maybe compress it a little bit and don't even want to have to EQ it.
That's right. Just chuck it out. Yep.
It's the NS10s of microphones.
Yeah. Doesn't sound good, but works.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's not really probably that fair to say.
I think it's probably true, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're on the money.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there, for sure.
I think the 416 sounds okay. I've never liked the NS10s, but I didn't mix on them back when everybody was mixing on them and then tune my ears to the way they sound. And
you know what?
So I don't know those speakers.
So I've got a pair of NS10s. I got, your talk about standards, like your Genelec 1030s, NS10s, and I've got a pair of Dunleavy Sovereign 4s, which if you don't know what those are, you're talking about a 6-foot pair of speakers with 2 10 inches.
Those mastering?
Yeah, 2 4 inches and a tweeter in the middle, all time aligned. And
mastering.
Yeah, okay. So if you put a subwoofer on the NS10s and you switch between the NS10s and the Dunleavys, the difference is much more hair splitting compared to than the Genelecs, which is like, holy cow, like where'd all the high end go?
Yeah.
The Genelecs are dark and kind of, they got that low end, but it's kind of like that rubbery kind of low end. And then when you hear the other speakers, and again, the NS10s are helped here by a subwoofer, but it's like that tight low end. And it's like, really? Like, you would expect the Genelecs to be more high end, or I shouldn't say high end, but yeah, there's definitely more distance between the Genelecs and these $5,000 speakers than the NS10s and the $5,000 speakers.
Well, there's a show for another day.
Show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I reckon we've covered a lot of microphones and a lot of ground.
We should also say thank you to Jeff Silverman, our new panel operator.
Yes, and a fine job too.
Absolutely. See you next week. You're officially a new panel member.
Thanks for staying up with us.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me here.
It was great. Great to have your feedback, Jeff. We really appreciate that, and certainly appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of another Pro Audio Suite. Next show, we're probably going to do an AES special, and following that, we'll do a full rundown of our favourite road cases. But for anyone who's been listening, Robbo, you've actually got the raw files of all the microphone testing we did.
Yeah, I do. They're sitting right here. So obviously, what you've been listening to was sent over Source Connect now via Jeff. So what we might do, mate, is that once we've done here, before we close the show, we might just put all those raw files at the end and leave them unprocessed so everyone can make their own comparison.
And no level changes, so it'll be as the output of the microphone?
Completely as you sent them to me, straight off the mic, yeah.
So the only one that's been given more gain was the dynamic, the Procaster, because it was a dynamic mic and I had to give it a bit of a crank. I think I probably upped it about 5 dB, I think. Right. It was quite a bit. But anyway, that gives you an idea of the output of the microphones and how they sound completely raw and untouched.
That was a lot of fun. That was really eye-opening, wasn't it?
I think the interesting thing is that I know that George has whispered in my ear during the show that the NTG4, he's going to be recommending that to all of his clients for their road case, which is very interesting. So leave your 41.6 at home and take your NTG4. And I think everyone was blown away by the NT1.
Yeah, that's the killer for me. That's the absolute killer.
Yeah. So, they've certainly punched way above their weight in this show, that's for sure.
Absolutely. As far as the four of us are concerned, they're on a winner there, definitely.
Yeah. And including Jeff, because I know Jeff said if he didn't have Slate, he would have the NT1s in his arsenal too. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Beautiful. Another show wrapped up, but don't forget, get to our Facebook. It's the Pro Audio Suite podcast. You can leave us questions there. You can actually subscribe there, and other information's also on our Facebook page. So go check it out, the Pro Audio Suite podcast Facebook.
I heard a bit of a rumour we might even have a website soon.
Oh, yes, there is a bit of a rumour going around, but yeah.
Catching up with the 21st century, finally.
That's right. Yeah, my telex machine needs a service anyway, so.
Oh, my page has just gone off. I've got some work coming in.
And carrying my mobile phone has done my back in.
Yeah, you've really got to get rid of that over-shoulder thing, mate. Seriously, it looks like a handbag.
Yes, those were the days. Who would have thought?
Exactly. All right, well, on that note, let's play these files and get out of here.
Okay, see you next time. Cheers. This next microphone is a dynamic microphone from Rode Microphones. It's called the Procaster. I'm running it once again through the M101. I've turned up the gain. Obviously, this one needs a lot more gain than the other microphones. There is no pop filter except for the one built in. There is no EQ and there is no compression. Once again, in the booth with the door open. Okay, second microphone. Microphone number 2 is the Sennheiser 416, 416, 416, whichever way you like to say it. Once again, running through a Grace Design M101. No compression, no EQ, in the booth with the booth door open. The C414eb in the booth. The door is open through an M101 from Grace Design. See what you think of the C414eb P48, a vintage mic from 1983. There you go. Okay, this is our next microphone. This one comes from Melbourne company Jeanne Audio. It's called the JA87. Now, by all accounts, it's actually not too dissimilar to an authentic U87 AI. But, that's pretty subjective. But see what you think. This is once again running through the M101. No compression and no EQ. In the booth with the door open and no pop shield. And here's another microphone, this one from Microtech Gefell. This is a tube/valve microphone. It's the M92.1S. It has the M7 capsule, which is a very historic capsule. In fact, it's pretty well an updated version of the UM57. Once again, no pop shield, which you'll probably hear in a tick. I'm sure I'm going to give you a plotive or two. Running through the Grace Design M101 with no EQ and no compression. I'm also in the booth with the door open. Okay, this is another microphone. This one is actually one of my favourites. It's quite rare. It's a limited edition Microtech Gefell M930 Art. Once again, running through the M101 from Grace Design. No compression and no EQ. In the booth with the door open. And you probably guessed already, no pop screen. Okay, this is the NTG4. Nothing is switched on, no high pass filter, no high boost. It's just completely flat. Once again, the booth door is open and we're running through the Grace M101. There you go, that's the NTG4 from Rode. Our next microphone is the NT1, which is the latest edition, the one that's black, from Rode Microphones. Once again, in the booth with the door open, running through the Grace Design M101 with no EQ and no compression. This is the Rode microphone.
Goodbye, goodbye. Wipe the tear, baby dear, from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know. I'll be tickled to death to go. Don't cry, don't sigh. There's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin, na poo toodaloo, goodbye.